Alright, what's going on, everyone? I haven't done any videos lately really about, San Onofre and Model 120 stuff, but this video is of something pretty important. But first of all, I've been doing some work on the Model 120. I greased the bearings at the bottom of the shaft housing. I had to repack it with grease because there was old grease in there that was all liquidy, so I had to repack that with grease, repack the bearings with grease, and it spins really good now. Cleaned it up a little bit more and continuing to do so. So I got the top off where the motor flange was. The motor I'm going to replace because this motor is burning out, so they use TEFC motors, so that's what I'm going to buy. This is just regular compressor duty 2 horsepower, but I'm going to go for a TEFC because it'll run cooler as well. Blower right there, Paxson blower. Still got to get a motor for that, 7.5 horsepower. Got to get the intake piece made that will connect to the intake. I got to get that all fabricated, and then I'll start moving forward on the Model 120 here eventually. Friend of mine, he's a welder and does metal work and fabrication and all that, and his father does fiberglass work, so I'll give him and his dad the blueprints for everything, and so hopefully that could be coming up here shortly, and I could start moving forward with the Model 120 project and getting parts needed. But that's not really the discussion of this video. Go over here and I'll show you what we got here for the discussion of this video. This is the discussion of today. Now, you may be wondering that this may look familiar. This is a cabinet from the legacy San Onofre siren system, and all the sirens in the legacy system had cabinets like this where their controls were housed inside. So you may be wondering, how in the hell did I actually get one if the legacy system was replaced 17 years ago? Well, that is true, but in the late 1990s, there was 2 locations that were removed from service, but the remnants of the cabinet and about 4 feet of the pole were left behind because the areas they were in were along a trail in a park, and whoever removed the siren just decided just leave the cabinet there because the bushes will grow over it and hide it out of the way, so it wasn't a big deal. So so this was location, I don't know if you could see that, SP03, so State Park 03. And there at one point was a total of 5 State Park locations, which after this one and State Park 05 were removed from service, there was only 3 locations. And that's hence why the locations that jumped from SP01, 02 directly to 4. Because, they didn't decide to relabel the location. But this was SP03, and then SP05 is also there. And I found these finally because I've been struggling to find where this location and SP05 were for years, and it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I found a website called California Coastal Records Project, which has aerial bird's eye view imagery of the California coastline all the way back to the 1970s. So I used that, and I'm like, I could use this not only to see the Model 120s and STL10s that are closest to the water, of course, so that would be like Dana Point, the lower parts of San Clemente, and then the state park and all that, but not necessarily the sirens that were in San Juan up in the hills, more inland in San Clemente, because the imagery was only by the water, so I can only see locations that are closest to the water. So anyways, so I used that, and I went to imagery dated from 1989, and I finally have found the location of this one, SP03, and SP05, of which I already kind of assumed that SP03, because I knew that there was a State Park 3 and 5 location for a long time now, but I knew they were removed from service at some point, which I was told by the Director of Emergency Planning at San Onofre at the time, which was about 5 years ago when I took a tour of the place. And that's how I actually met the Director of Emergency Planning anyways. So I think this location and SP05 were removed from service around the late 1990s, if I had to guess, possibly due to the fact that SP04, because this was in between, SP03 right here was in between SP02 and 04, and SP05 was east of SP04. They probably removed those two locations due to the fact that SP04 possibly provided coverage in the areas that these sirens were at, and it just wasn't required because SP04 was a Model 120. So, because that was a STL-10 and prior to that Sentry, but that was one of the first 7 Model 120s to be installed, which indirectly swapped out an existing STL-10 site. But SP03 and 05, for example, were left as STL-10 still. So anyways, yeah, I used that and I found them, and then I jumped to imagery from 2002 because it was a huge jump from 1989 to 2002 imagery, and at that point both locations were gone, but I noticed an object in the place of where the siren and cabinet was. So I got to thinking, oh my god, they left the frickin' cabinet there. So I got excited. So then what I did is I kind of also had like a thought of maybe they actually came back a couple years later and removed the remains. But I was wrong, because I then went on to imagery, satellite imagery, that is, you know, the most recent, well, at the time, this was about 2 years ago, and of course I see the object still there. So I got to thinking, oh my god, I think they left the cabinets there, and they're probably abandoned, so I could probably ask if I can actually acquire it. So then I didn't have enough time, and I had to wait a couple of months, because this I think was around like I can't remember, it was probably like May or June, so I had to wait about 2 months until August, until we went down to our timeshare in Dana Point to actually go down and see if they are the cabinets themselves. And to my shocking surprise, buried in the bushes was this. And I could not get back there right away, so I came back about a day or two later while we were still down there on vacation, and I pushed a lot of the bushes out of the way to kind of like make like a path to the cabinet, and yeah, and I got up to it, and I also noticed that there wasn't any locks on it. It was just left. It was left exactly like this. Later on, a couple months later, I then came back with friends and we opened it up. Finally, we came back and made a trip down there because we wanted to grab the stuff out of it. So we did that, and we took everything out. Power was removed from it. Everything was cut from it. Incoming power, the wires were removed. And there was a transformer that would have been nearby that would have connected to the grid to supply the electricity to it. That transformer is obviously gone, probably after the siren was removed from service. And yeah, the disconnect was thrown in the off position, and yeah, but everything was still in there other than the, they took out the DTMF decoder that would have been to activate it, because these were activated via landline. Yeah, so we went down there and everything was all disconnected, and these were activated by landline. They were hardwired, including the wheel-ins that replaced the legacy system. They were all landline activated. Why not radio? I really don't know. Possibly because the lack of a repeater nearby, or security reasons, or whatever it may be. But yeah, they just activated them via landline. So anyways, moving on. So yeah, We get everything out, we leave the cabinet there, and we didn't come back and get the cabinet until a few months later with, you know, my dad's truck, because there's no way we would have been able to fit it in my car and would have been able to lift it without a wagon or dolly, because I'm telling you right now, this is one of the heaviest pieces I've ever lifted in my life. It easily weighs about maybe 300-400 pounds, because this is a super thick gauge of steel. Anyways, let's open it up. First of all, right here it was this, which just went right there, and that's just a little Lexan glass window to view the meter that would have been in here. But since I was sandblasting it and cleaning it all up, removing the rust, which I still have to do, I took that out because I'm going to get new hardware for all this anyways. So it's these two padlocks. This door opens up. There's a maintenance note right there from 1989. You could pause and read that. So that's that. And then it's kind of hard to do this with one hand, so bear with me real quick. So it's empty right now, and then on this door there is obviously the location number, and then an old telephone number, and a TSC phone operator type, whatever that is. And what was right here that I took off was a telephone, because since these were landline activated, they put a telephone in here for technicians when they are servicing, either during the quarterly growl tests or troubleshooting on whatever it may be. So that's what was right there, and there's a cable management square right there. But I took everything out, I gutted everything for now. And on this side, that's where the incoming power would go. It would go through the meter and then to the disconnect. And then up here is where the signal timer would be. And then down here is where the DTMF decoder relay would have been. And then that right there is the outgoing power to the siren. And that is where the landline would come in and go into the decoder. Also that was in here was a tamper switch, which would have been mounted right here. And as a matter of fact, I got that over here. So just a magnetic tamper switch made by Flare Electronics, and it would just, that connected to the decoder, because it had it was a technically sort of a two-way system. If it had a telephone and a tamper switch, which probably would just call back to the activation center, which was the EOC in the jurisdiction where the center console encoder would have been. So there's that, and that would have been mounted right there and then right there. Okay, so there's the cabinet. Everything's taken out for now. Now let's move on to the main controls. Here is the signal timer, or with the cheesy label, the siren control panel, which they put these labels on obviously for the technicians to know what is what, you know. So I repainted this. It's like an off-color white. I sanded all the rust off because it had a ton of rust on it. I media blasted it and then repainted it best I could. There was a tag right here, of which I took off, but here was the tag right here, and it just showed the location, the voltage, just the specs, amperage, full load amps, duty cycle, all that. I'm gonna make a new one of these for the Model 120s in this layout, a custom one eventually, but that's not really a necessity at the moment, unlike getting the actual siren complete at that matter. So anyways, here's the inside of it. So here's your signal timer right here. It's got two cams, a cam for attack and one for alert, and this signal timer is made by Harrington Signal Company, which I think they make fire alarm stuff, but I could not find any information online or anywhere in general about this signal timer. But it's pretty much an AR timer. It works very similarly to an AR timer, except the cams and the motor and the micro switches are mounted vertically instead of horizontally, and obviously the buttons are actually soldered onto the board itself. So got your test, you got your start, which is this is the only signal they used, which is just alert, and this is just to manually run it via the cabinet. And then this one says civil defense alert, which is, they labeled that for the attack. And then you got your cancel, and then you have a 12 terminal bus bar. And how it worked is, here's your transformer. It's kind of a big transformer, just a step down transformer, but your incoming 240 connected to these two terminals, of which there's 4 terminals, but they jumped them together. But these outer 2 terminals for 240 then connect to this for 110, and I have this green extension cord on it currently tapped onto the 110 side just to power it for now until I get everything fully assembled and 240 and all that. So there's that, and then you got your ground going down there, and then the 2 wires would then connect to terminals 9 and 10 for the 120 volt incoming power, and then go through everything all throughout the board. Your micro switches, another micro switch right here, your cams, capacitor, your ice cube relays. One is for controlling alert and others for controlling attack. Terminals 11 and 12 go to this contactor, of which I had to add. Terminals 3 and 4 would go to this contactor, which would have been for the chopper, because I had to actually reconfigure. I'll put a picture up of what it looked like before, but I had to reconfigure this for the Model 120, of which I looked at the pictures of how the cabinet was reconfigured for the Model 120 sites and just went like that. But I'll post a picture up right now. So that's how I had to reconfigure it. So I did that. And I kept the contactor that was used for the STL10 rotor in here, which is a furnace size 2.5, which is plenty for this. Single phase, rated for 60 amps. And then I had to buy this contactor, which I actually got. It's pretty much brand new, and I got it for like half price. And it's a size 0, which is rated for 20 amps, which is sufficient for a 2 horsepower TEFC. And this will be obviously sufficient enough for a 7.5 horse motor for the blower. So that will be controlling the blower, that will be controlling the chopper. And then terminals 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8 were for the decoder. The decoder would hook up to these. I had to jump terminals 1 and 2 together for it to actually cycle, because if I didn't have those 2 jump together, you would have to hold this down in order for it to cycle. I think those are the shutdown loops in the circuit. So I had to jump those, and this is a 4-minute cycle. So it's either 4 minutes of alert or 4 minutes of attack. So now, this empty relay socket right here, I got to solder in a time delay relay to control the delay of the blower contactor after the chopper contactor drops out, because that's what they had. So I gotta solder in a base and then get a time delay relay to control the off delay, and then that'll be all complete. So yeah, so there's that, and eventually when I get this all finished, I'll do a video of it running through its cycles. Moving on, I apologize for the wind noise of the fan. So over here we have the telecommunications encoder decoder, because I think the DTMF relay in here also would be able to encode, hence like for the tamper switch to encode and send a signal back to the activation point. So there's that. Obviously I have all the conduits and stuff taken off. Unfortunately, when they removed the siren from service, they pulled all the activation DTMF relays out, and the only thing they left in here was this step-down transformer, which stepped down the 120 volt to 15 volts, I think, for the board, and that would have been mounted back here. And then up here is where the I think it was a equipment rack of something. I think it had like a little battery for something. I really don't know everything, but that's where that was, and I'll post a picture of what they looked like. So yeah, so that's that. Empty at the moment. So let me go over here real quick. And then here's just some of the cutout wires. These are the wires that the power wire and then the R23 cables went, which this would go and connect to the transformer. They actually went into this toggle switch or something, and then this would connect to the decoder for triggering the siren, and then, you know, other wires and stuff. So that's that. And then now last thing is the remote monitoring equipment that was added to the legacy system around 1994. So this is like the newest stuff within the cabinet. So here's your landline wire coming in from the telecommunication grid, and these white and green wires went here, went into this terminal block right here through this phone line, and then that connected to the telephone that was mounted in the cabinet. These four wires right here went to this terminal block and went through here, and then went through this. This is just for the power for this box. Went through this gray wire and then went into this device right here. This is a, I don't know if you can see that, a data station termination. I don't really know what this is or what this does, but it's something that's probably like within the IT tech telecommunications, which I don't really know, but this is what this is. So the incoming landline would connect into this. It says Pacific Bell, which later became AT&T, because this was equipment from the mid-1990s. So connected into these terminals right here and right here, and then it went into this telecommunications, data station termination card, and then coming out, these two right here where my fingers are, and then these two through these wires, went through this phone line, and that then would come and plug into here. This is just a case, and all this equipment is made by Tel Labs. And this is just a case that houses equipment, and it connects through these and connects to this LED-X loopback receiver, which this would probably send the information back to a computer to report the status of when it was last activated, etc., etc., like a typical two-way system would work. And then obviously here's power for that, and then coming out here and here, white wire would then connect to the decoder that would be in here. That would connect through these. So prior to this remote monitoring stuff, all it was is the incoming landline wires would just directly connect to the decoder and telephone. But when they added this stuff, the incoming landline would go through all this, the data station termination, and then the loopback receiver, which this would probably send the information back, you know, the status, when it was last activated, number of cycles, all that, yada yada yada. So that's all that. That's all this equipment. I'm not going to be using any of this stuff. My plan is, when the whole siren is complete, everything's going to be mounted to a trailer. It's going to be powered by a generator, and as for activating it, I'm going to be using, you know, a handheld radio to send DTMF to a scanner, which would then be connected to like a DTMF 8 Plus decoder relay to activate it. And that's how I would do. So I'd have to put an antenna in and all that. But that's still far out away for now, because this project is a lot of money, so it'll take time. But I gotta first get all the Model 120 stuff made, so the horns, the frame, all that. And then, yeah, and then it'll continue from there, and then that's when I can work on the cabinet controls and all that and the power source. So, yeah, so I guess this is a pretty major update on the whole Model 120 journey, you could say. Now that I got original controls for it, it's pretty much complete now. I just got to get all the parts made and then add all the power, generator, breaker box I got to put in because it can't use the that and that. Like I said earlier, they used a breaker which was 5 circuits and all. Like I said, I posted a picture up earlier in this video. Yeah, so until next time, this is an update, I guess you could say, a pretty major update. So stay tuned for more in the future.